Well, hello and welcome. We're a few minutes here behind, but we've been having some technical difficulties. So hopefully I am here and you are here and you're going to join us here for an Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint live series event today. My name is Guy Stevens. I'm the founder and executive director here at the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. If you're not familiar with who we are or what we do, the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint was formed about 5 years ago. I guess we're going on 5.5 years now. Time moves quickly. Really started around the issue of restraint and seclusion happening in schools around the nation, happening in other settings. However, it's really far more than that. It's not just restraint and seclusion. In a school setting, it's restraint, seclusion, suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment. Moreover than that, it's really about all the things that are often being done to children and other people in the name of behavior. So the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint was formed really to try to change policies and practice and do a lot of work around education. And in that name, we have our live series, which is all about trying to bring some great guests and presentations to you. So really excited to have you here today. We've got a great event in store. We're going to be talking to an ASR volunteer, Heathyr Watson, and Heather's got a great presentation on tap. I'm going to introduce Heathyr in a moment, but before I do, a couple of quick notes. One is that we put these presentations out every 2 weeks, so it's a bi-weekly live series, and it is available live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and maybe X, although I got an error on X today, so maybe not. But we put it out on a number of different platforms, and of course, we make it available as an audio podcast as well. So if you prefer to listen on the go, you can get it on Apple Music or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We usually have that available in a couple of days after the presentation. So we are excited to have you here today. I do want to share with you that our podcast is made possible through the support of some of our sponsors here. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about one of our sponsors here today, which is Supportable Solutions. They've been an annual sponsor of ours here. And Supportable Solutions is a fantastic company that is run by Connie Persick, who has been a frequent guest and is one of my frequent contributors. We work together on a lot of different things, and Connie developed something called the Why Toolkit, which is really a great way to really get beneath behavior and understand the true why and what's happening. So let me share a little bit with you about Supportable Solutions.
This updated functional behavioral assessment and behavior intervention plan is a game changer. For once, parents don't feel like they're being blamed for their child's behavior. This web-based assessment guides support teams along their journey to discover the causes of distress behavior in individuals, all while, at the same time, utilizing a visual approach to help shift perspectives. The Why Toolkit helps educators and others ask the right questions when a child is struggling with behavioral challenges, leading to answers that will build regulatory capacities and robust nervous systems. I highly recommend it. The Why Toolkit is a testament to the fact that we all do well if we can.
And of course, the toolkit is available now. It's something that you can get if you're a school. You can get a subscription that would cover a number of children. Of course, even as a parent, you can get a single license. It's only a few dollars, and see what it's all about and why it might be able to help with your particular situation. You might have seen there a quote from Mona Delahook, and she was a reviewer at one point. It's really a great approach and a different way of really trying to get to the true why, what's happening. Want to thank Supportable Solutions for being a sponsor here of our podcast. I do want to mention here real quickly as well, just more of an announcement than anything else. We are doing a special event later this year with our friends and colleagues across the way here in the UK at Studio 3. And Studio 3 is a great organization that does a lot of work in a very similar vein that we do. And of course, they also do a lot of training. Studio 3 is well known for an approach called low arousal that they developed, and have some fantastic colleagues over there. But we're actually doing an event with them later this year. We're kind of working together on an event called Making Sense of a Chaotic World, Brain, Body, and Beyond. And it's a event that we're doing kind of in partnership with Studio 3. I'm going to be hosting the event, and we've got some fantastic speakers that'll be there. Peter Vermeulen is going to be there talking about the predictive brain, making the world safe and predictable. Kelly Mahler and Rachel Thompson are going to be talking about interception, making sense of our own bodies. We also will have, of course, Professor Andrew McDonald, who is a friend and colleague doing some fantastic work on supporting people through distress and trauma, the low arousal approach. This is a fantastic event. It's coming up in October. I'm trying to remember the date here, October 24th. And the tickets are available now. If you go to the Studio 3 website, and we'll try to put a link to that in the chat as well, you can sign up now. I do want to mention here that the cost is in euros. So you have to, your credit card company will figure that out behind the scenes. I don't remember what the conversion rate is right now, but it's very similar. So anyway, check that event out. It looks like something great that we've got coming up here in the near future. And with that, let me go ahead and introduce to you our very special guest that we have here joining us today. I want to introduce you to Heathyr and tell you a little bit about Heathyr. As a young child, Heathyr always knew that she would go into a helping profession, whether it was medicine, teaching, or social work. Heathyr has a bachelor's degree in history education and a master's in social work. Heathyr is working on licensing so that she can become a clinical social worker, and Heathyr hopes to achieve a Ph.D. in the near future as well. And many of you that watch our show on a regular basis have heard me say this before, but social workers are some of my favorite people. They're fantastic people. So you know when you got a social worker, you've got somebody that really gives a damn about people, and that's one of the things I love about social workers. Heathyr has worked in residential since 2017, and as someone who is trained in restraints, believes that there are better ways of handling crisis situations for youth. Heathyr believes that if schools, hospitals, residential, or any other place claims to be a safe spot for children and youth, it should be just that. Reducing and eliminating seclusion restraints will build more resilient youth and caregivers in the long run. In her spare time, Heathyr enjoys reading, researching, playing video games with her husband, and taking the most random picture of her pets that she can. You know, I should have had you share some of these pictures, because random pictures of pets are like one of my happy places. So Heathyr, welcome. It's fantastic to have you here today. And of course, in your bio, what we didn't mention is the fact that you're a Alliance Against Seclusion Restraint volunteer, somebody that's done some articles for us as well in the past, and we appreciate you being part of the work that we're doing. So welcome, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi, I was making sure I was not on mute, because I'm always on mute. Yeah, I'm Heathyr. I've been with the Alliance since August of last year, and yeah. There is an update to my bio, though. I am in a doctoral program for social work, so
fantastic.
I just started that this summer, so yeah.
Fantastic. Excited to hear that. So we will, you've got a presentation that you're going to be sharing with us today, and we'll bring that up on the screen in a second. Before we do, though, I just want to ask anybody that happens to be watching live, and I see there's a number of folks that are on live with us right now. If you are watching live, tell us who you are and where you're from in the chat. It's always fun to see where people are joining us from. And I always like to say that, we tend to, believe it or not, get a really international audience here. So it's not unusual for us to have, people from the UK or New Zealand or Australia or elsewhere. So it's always fun to see. So if you're watching live right now, in your chat window, let us know who you are and where you're joining us from. So with that, Heathyr, we will let you go ahead and share your screen. So I'll let you get that ready. And while you're getting that ready, I'll just mention again to people that this is being recorded. So you will have an opportunity to go back. If you don't have an opportunity to listen to the whole thing right now, you can go back and watch it on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. X seems to be having a problem right now. And you'll also be able to listen to it as an audio podcast. And I got a couple of people. Look at this already. Heathyr, we've got somebody here from Nova Scotia. So Sarah Ann has joined us from Nova Scotia. And Stacy, hello, Stacy, is watching from Mexico. So we've already got a couple people from various places. And we've got Melissa here from Wisconsin. So it's great to see a few people joining us. So your screen, it doesn't look like it's available to me yet. So hopefully we'll get that here in just a moment. Here we go. I see it. Okay. So Heathyr, I'm going to go ahead and bring your screen up. And I know we were having a little bit of a technical difficulty getting it to share full screen, but we will just work with it how it is. And it looks like it's working just fine. So I'm going to hand it off to you and let you give your presentation. We talked before the show, and I asked you if you wanted to have questions at the end or during, and you said you were happy to have questions during the presentation. And what that means is I'm going to stick around. I'm going to mute myself and try to be quiet, but I might occasionally pop up and ask you a question. Or if I see questions in the audience, I might bring those up as well. So if you have questions during the presentation, you'll be welcome to ask those as it goes. And let me give one more welcome here because I have to give a shout out to Amy. Amy is also an Alliance volunteer in Vista, California, and a big fan of Heather. So, Heather, you've got fans. So the pressure's on. So at any rate, let me hand it over to you. I know you're going to be talking about the importance of sensory integration when working with children and youth. And I'm going to go ahead and mute, but I will be here. So if you need anything at all from me, you let me know and I'll pop up. Otherwise, I might just pop up with an occasional question if that's okay with you.
That is okay with me.
All right. So take it away, and we're ready to learn some great stuff from you. Thanks, Heather.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Heather. I started looking into sensory integration when I was working residential. I was tasked with, as part of my internship, to find a way to reduce self-harm in the boys I was working with. And oh my gosh, as I was researching articles, I came across occupational therapy and sensory integration, and how you have to replace behaviors with better coping behaviors if you want to eliminate certain things. And that is what got me on the sensory integration kick a couple of years ago. There are some pictures of self-harm. I do talk about seclusion and restraint throughout this. I just wanted to let you know, it's a little bit further in the slideshow, but there is a picture of a wrist with scars on it. Okay, so in elementary school, I actually struggled through elementary school. And if I would ask that girl today if she would ever be getting a doctorate, she'd probably say no. I struggled doing homework. I was diagnosed with ADHD halfway through my MSW program, and things started to make sense for me. Why I wouldn't do homework in elementary school. It was boring. It sounds arrogant. I knew this stuff, so I wouldn't be able to sit and do it. Yeah, and in the fourth grade, I was put behind a barrier away from the rest of the class. I wasn't allowed to go to recess. And all this was because consequences and punishment were a big thing for me growing up. And as we go through times today, we're seeing the negative effects of consequences like this. I do have my struggles. I struggle with interacting with people to this day. I don't know if it's because of my ADHD or my introvertness, or it was because I wasn't allowed to interact with my peers as a child. And then I have that thing where I have to prove myself to be the smartest and most useful person in the classroom, I guess. Okay. So yeah, I am not an occupational therapist. I'm a mental health therapist. I currently work with adults and youth. With adults, I work with substance use and mental health. With kids, I'm actually working with behaviors in schools from my office. So I get to lean on Dr. Delahook and Dr. Desautel's a lot. And yeah, like I said, this all started with me trying to find ways for the kids I worked with in residential to stop self-harming. This presentation also came up because at my old job in an emergency shelter care, we wanted to do something to help the kids who were struggling with self-harm, suicidal ideation, destructive behaviors, to find healthy and positive outlets. And I was like, oh, I know what to do. Let's look into sensory integration. I'm starting with this little vignette. So Francesca, she doesn't want to do her homework, fidgety, distracted. She's agitated about something. And as a teacher or a paraprofessional or an adult working with that child, your frustrations are rising because Francesca needs to be doing that assignment. You're thinking about taking her recess away from her because she's not following directions. There are less punitive ways of handling this. Sensory integration allows for you to meet the child or the student where they're at without the harsh consequences that could either escalate the situation or cause the child to shut down. Yeah. And so we can talk about the senses really quick. We know about sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Occupational therapists include vestibular, like the movement of your head, the senses in your head. If you have an ear infection or your ears are clogged, you can kind of feel unbalanced, and that's where that comes in. Perception, how your muscles move, like tightening, loosening them. And then interoception is those feelings of hunger, heart rate, and elimination. And something I've been learning recently is that those in the neurodiverse population, autism especially, actually do have some problem with interoception, and ADHD too. Like don't they may not feel hunger like we do, or actually I have ADHD and I don't feel hunger all the time, but their struggles to feel hunger, they have to be reminded, oh, you haven't eaten in a couple hours, why don't you go eat? Um, yeah. This lady, Anna Jean Ayers, is the one who really started looking into sensory integration. Yeah, bachelor's, master's in occupational therapy, and then educational psychology is where her PhD is. She started examining the behaviors between the brain, the relationship between the brain and behaviors, and she's really the one who is accredited for starting the sensory integration process. So, the occupational therapist pyramid of learning says that for kids to start being able to learn, their senses have to be met first. They have to be calm. They have to be in a um, place where they can learn. And to do that, they have to be aware. Um, if you've done trainings with educational psychologists or anybody, sometimes they talk about crossover behaviors. Bringing your right hand to your left and your left to your right. That's something that's oh my gosh, that is something kids are not born with. It is something they develop over time, and it's sometimes something you have to teach a child. And yeah, you have to be able to meet those senses. As you go up the pyramid, you learn about hand-eye coordination. So those kids who have really messy handwriting, their perceptual motor development, that's where they're at. They don't necessarily have that control yet, and it's something that oh my god, it's something that that has to be taught sometimes. And when the central nervous system and the sensory um, are met and they're where they're at, that's where you can start seeing the academic learning, the children being able to do their activities of daily living and more calm behaviors.
And I'm going to interrupt you for one quick second here, for a couple things. One, there was a question here about, is there someplace we could find this pyramid to show teachers, and any ideas of where they can find the pyramid, or
I think on my last slide I have this pyramid linked
okay,
somewhere.
okay,
There's It's called the Star Institute in England, actually, the UK. They
okay,
do a lot with sensory integration, and I got a lot of my information from there.
okay.
I
And are
also
you willing to
Googled
make your
things.
slides available as well if somebody wanted to see them,
Um,
or would you
so in a
prefer to
couple of
just
my
share the?
slides, I use artwork from Neurowild,
Okay, gotcha.
who's on Facebook. If you don't follow her on Facebook, follow.
Yeah,
Amazing work.
M is fantastic. Yep.
I'd probably want to check with them before I shared these slides if they were comfortable with that, because it is their work.
Sure, sure. Okay, okay, great. We'll try to provide that link then. And just a quick other update here. A couple other people that have, I'm somehow missed that Ginger was on here. Ginger Healy, and said something about, couldn't agree more about social workers. Big fan of Ginger's work as well. And I had somebody else that, here we go. Somebody else that joined us from Pittsburgh. So great to see other people joining. Your earlier slide, you mentioned too the taking away of recess, and like every muscle in my body tightened up. I hate to see some of these things that are common approaches that are so harmful, especially when we think about kind of the movement needs and the sensory needs of an individual. So anyway, just had to Melissa said as well. Love Neurowild. Anyway, I just wanted to interrupt with that question real quick, but I'll let you take it away.
So these are some of the primitive reflexes we're born with. If the slideshow were sharing like it's supposed to, they come up separately. So like when you see a new baby and they're like grabbing for things, that's the palmar reflex. They're looking for something to latch onto. Rooting and sucking reflex are how babies find and eat their food. The startle response, like when you make a sudden noise, a baby might startle, their eyes might get wide. The head and body control is a tonic labyrinth reflex, and then you got your neck reflex. It's when your body starts to follow your neck and head. So, like I said, these are originally in babies, and as we grow, these turn into other reflexes for our movements. Oh, somebody found a copy of the pyramid. And so this is a little chart about what happens if your primitive reflexes are retained. So, hypersensitive, hyperreactivity, poor impulse control, sensory overload, like with the rooting reflex, fussy eating, the child may suck their thumb longer than developmental milestones say they should. So yeah, I'm nervous. I am a nervous speaker. And this, I got this off of, I'm pretty sure I got this off of Star Institute. Like I said, if I have the link at the end of the show. Okay, so when I was looking into this for residential, and as they established this program at the emergency shelter care I worked at, I did go into like what the goals of sensory integration according to occupational therapists were, and it's having the challenge exactly where a child can do it, but there's still that challenge. It's finding that balance between not making it too hard, but making it hard enough where the child's going to want to do it and they're going to have fun doing it. As children go through these, they learn adaptive responses. But because with sensory integration, it also teaches problem solving skills and critical thinking skills. How are they going to achieve this challenge? How are they going to solve this problem? It's active. A lot of kids are active. They're kinesthetic learners, which is something that not everybody understands, is that kindergartners shouldn't be sitting 8 hours a day doing handwriting and math. They should be up moving around. And then it's child directed. It's not where, oh, we're going to do this balance beam because I want to do this balance beam. The child in occupational therapy might see the stairs to climb, the slide to go down. A lot of occupational therapists have like monkey bars or those ring things that you hang from. The child may want to do that, and that's where you go. Now there is mental health being worked into occupational therapy. So the therapist is talking to the child as they're swinging about like their emotions, their feelings, where they feel it in their body. And they're making that connection to, this is where I feel it in my body, and this is how I can express this emotion in a healthy way that doesn't get me or others hurt. So sensory processing is the way our body organizes the information from the environment around us. It's supposed to help us respond in meaningful and consistent ways. And as children become older, they can organize it better. They can respond in a manner that is more appropriate. And this helps with emotional regulation, social skills, social skill development, and other necessary life skills. With social skills, I know there's some things out there about how social skills are being taught to the autistic population. And this isn't that. It's learning about why we don't push a friend because it can hurt your friend. It's not teaching a kid, oh, you have to go up and shake somebody's hand when they want to shake your hand. In sensory integration, we're not forcing kids to do things they don't want to do, and we shouldn't be using sensory integration as a reward so kids do what we want them to do.
Yeah, you mentioned Em earlier from NeuroWild, who has some fantastic resources on kind of the issues with social skills, right, and the double empathy problem, and so some great materials out there on that. I'm glad you made that distinction.
So sensory seeking is when the child actively seeks out sensory input. They're always touching things, they're moving, they're like little balls of energy. These are the kids you might randomly see running into a wall because they're looking for that input on their joints. They're always on the go. They have difficulty sitting still, and they may engage in repetitive behavior such as rocking and spinning. And there's a word for that I always use, and I cannot think of it because, pressure. It'll come to me. So, and sensory avoiding is when a child actively avoids things. So if you're at a parade and the sounds are really loud, that child might be the one covering their ears and hiding and trying to get away from all the noise making, the sun, all the people. They avoid certain textures. They're the kids who can feel the seams on their socks, and they don't want to wear their socks. They avoid certain smells, certain foods. Like I will never eat refried beans because of the texture. I love carrots, but I will not eat cooked carrots because of the texture. So that's my sensory avoiding. Um, and they become easily overwhelmed and busy in chaotic environments. And sensory seeking children too can become overwhelmed in those environments, and those behaviors might increase of like touching, running. Okay, stimming, that's the word. So everybody stims. Hair twirling right now. I'm kicking my leg because I'm really nervous. Foot tapping. My notes for meetings, I always have doodles. Stims are repetitive behavior. They help regulate emotions. They can show excitement or show joy. They can also come from somebody being really nervous. Some schools and programs try to eliminate this no matter what the stim is because they are inappropriate or distracting. And when I work with parents and kids, as long as those stims are not harming the child or others, we shouldn't really stop stimming. It's healthy. It's a way for people to express their emotions. So self harm is actually considered by some a stimming behavior because they're trying to feel pain or an emotion that they can't feel without doing something harmful towards themselves. So these are a bunch of pictures of sensory seeking. Like I said, this was designed around when I worked with kids in emergency shelter care. So there was a lot of wall punching, a lot of throwing, a lot of book throwing, um, yelling, screaming. Um, and that's really where I got people on board with the sensory integration is by talking about like if we want to stop this, we have to give them an outlet for these behaviors. So these are the kids who like stomp, have really heavy footsteps. They enjoy jumping, hopping, bumping, and crashing into things. They may not know their own strength. They may rip paper like when they're writing. The tip of the pen or pencil rips the paper. They may accidentally break a toy. Or they might hurt others by accident. So like they're playing tag and like they accidentally push that kid to the ground. The intention wasn't to push the kid to the ground. They're just not aware of their own strength. These are the people who like to touch people, objects. I had one of my sensory toys up here with me that I was messing around earlier. It's a softball that I like to pull on because that's what I need to do. They chew on their shirt sleeves, collars, other non-food items. Something that's newer, I think it's been around a couple of years now, is jewelry. It's jewelry kids can wear around their neck and that they can chew on instead of chewing on their shirts or paper. It's usually it's food safe silicone. It's safe for the kids to chew on, and it was created because a parent or somebody smarter than me saw a need for kids to be able to safely chew on something. When emotionally unregulated, yeah, it says residents, violence can happen. They hit others, they hit items, they throw things. And like I said, they self harm in an attempt to feel things. And that's, yeah. Sensory avoidance is these are the kids who may not like being hugged. They are easily startled, like noises are really loud, and it can be something you think is quiet. They hear background noises other people aren't able to detect. Like I'm one of those people. I can sit in my living room and hear my refrigerator across the room buzzing. I can hear lights above me buzzing, and it annoys me and it gets on my nerves. These are the kids who do not like. I already said they don't like being touched, but they're oh my god, they are also worried about people touching them or bumping into them. They refuse to wear clothes that are scratchy, uncomfortable. You may think it's comfortable for you, but it doesn't mean it's comfortable for another person. They also may not go on the swings or slides or anything that like messes with their balance in their head. Their ears, the vestibular or perceptive input. They have trouble knowing where their body is in relation to other people or objects, and they prefer quieter environments and avoid crowds. One thing I always tell people, if somebody doesn't want to be touched, whether or not they have a sensory processing disorder, don't touch them, don't hug them, don't get into their bubble, don't make things worse for them because you think you have that right to be in there. bubble when you don't. I'm one of those people. People have to be an arm length away from me, or I just look at them. Sensory overload is when all of our senses, or one or more, are overloaded by light, sounds. They're receiving too much information either at once, like in 1 hour, and sensory overload happens, or it happens throughout the day. So I get parents, when I'm doing assessments on their kids, they're like, when my kid gets home, they're crying, they're upset, um, they're throwing things, they don't want to do anything, and I talk a little bit about sensory overload. At school, they're expected to sit still all day. They can't control the lights above them. They can't get up and move around when their bodies are saying, I need to get up and move around. And then when they get home, they're done. And it's natural. It's okay. It's not your kid trying to be disobedient. It's your kid telling you, I need I need something right now. And for some kids, it might be 30 minutes in their room reading a book, or lights off, listening to their favorite music. Other kids, it's, why don't we go outside and run around and do something you want to do before we even attempt to do our homework. So sensory overload causes a rise in anxiety. Some kids aren't able to speak. It causes issues with being restless. Some kids cries, others, and they're trying to find a way to regulate that behavior or that feeling they're having. I'm one of those people. I go into sensory overload easily. It's why I stopped being a home-based therapist and wanted to have my own office. When things are unorganized, if I've been around too many people in one day, um, I just need to come home, go up to my bedroom with lights off and nothing else. I just need that quiet.
Hey, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second, just because you've had some comments here in the chat, and just people sharing their experiences. Amy shared, my daughter runs into the wall all the time. Melissa said you're doing great. Amy came back and said, I'm the one hiding and trying to get away from all the noise and people. Amy also said, I've got a jumper. Ashley shared, choose on things that aren't sensory mouth toys. And Amy shared, mine jumped on an iPad. Ashley mentioned paper. Shelly said, we need more opportunities for children to move throughout the school day. We've had so many movement opportunities when I attended school in the 70s. All of this focus on sitting and testing is not beneficial to young learners. I don't know if you have any comments about that. I mean, I want to scream an amen, but do you have any comments for that?
Oh no, I agree, because when I was in kindergarten, it was half day. I don't remember anything about kindergarten except playing with the math manipulatives. But
I just
my
remember
cousin,
learning not to eat the finger paints, and
yeah,
I didn't always do well with that, but
and now it's all day. My cousin's the last time I checked, she was a kindergarten teacher, and it's all day. And even when I was in the preschool system, we were teaching kids like how to write their names at like 2.5 and 3 years old, and that's not development. Oh my gosh, it is not
developmentally
appropriate for
appropriate,
their
right?
age,
Yep, yep,
because
yep.
they're supposed to be up, moving around, and then that is where social skills are naturally learned, is through play. And so, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
it
Too
seems like
much.
there's so many things that we're pushing that are not developmentally appropriate, and which is, I mean, again, one of the places an occupational therapist can be so helpful. Ashley said, we found that to be trial and error. I've gotten some, my daughter says, are too loud. Amy said, oh, yeah, that was me. My mom made all my performance dresses when I was a kid, and I hated every inch of that scratchy lace. Yeah, I remember removing lots of tags. And Ashley said, Ashley had a question. Any suggestions or guiding away from coming home to watch TV? I worry it overstimulates her more.
Oh goodness. Um, I'm thinking, because I actually not had thought of that question, because I worked in controlled environments where when the kids got back from school, at one place it was quiet time. They had to go to their rooms. Some napped, some read books, some refused to stay in their rooms and sat in the living area. And as long as they were quiet, we stopped fighting them on it, because it's what they needed. Because some kids are more social. Talk to your kids about what they need and then what you expect, because I agree, like, being at school all day around other kids is stimulating, and then coming home and watching TV might just put them over the edge with stimulation. I know when I was talking to one of my friends, she has a young daughter. I think she's going into 5th grade, but the previous year for her, she was in a school was horrible, and she made a quiet corner. And after school, her kid went to that quiet corner, read, did whatever the kid wanted. Offering options is always good. Like, hey, I don't want you watching TV right now. Do you want to color? Do you want to go outside? Do you want to play with Play-Doh? Do you want to listen to an audiobook? Maybe that way they get, um, if they are a sensory seeker and seeking that like organized sound, listening to an audiobook might be something that helps them relax without watching TV and seeing all the colors. Yeah. So to help with sensory overload, I tell people be intentional about their environments. Allow your kids to control their environment as much as they can. I watch TikTok, and a thing I'm seeing on TikTok is less toys in the bedrooms. And at first, I was like, "Wow, that's a kid's bedroom. They should have whatever they want in there." And then one parent explained it as they're not trying to take the toys away from their kids; they're trying to create a space their kids can control easily without getting overloaded. And I'm like, that makes sense. They weren't trying to be mean to their kids, and their kids had access to their toys and their activities. It just wasn't in the bedroom. They were trying to make the bedroom a place where the kid could easily keep up with the responsibility of cleaning it and could go to relax without having to worry about a bunch of things all over the place. I also tell people sometimes you need to allow yourself to do what your body's telling you to do. So if it's telling you you need to get up and walk, get up and walk. I'm an anxious pacer. I will pace up and down hallways all day at work while I'm working on plans and things for the therapy stuff I do. Or if I'm trying to plan out an article I'm writing, I pace, and I pace a lot. As long as it's something that's safe, we should be allowing ourselves and our kids to do it. Sometimes just changing where you're at helps. Kids can't do this, they're in school all day. Some classrooms are very aware of this, and because it's back to school season, like TikTok teachers are showing what they do for their kids, like the quiet corners. I saw a teacher, they had a couple of desks in a quieter part of the room, but the kids were allowed to walk there. When they needed to, they were allowed to sit there. And then having access to calming things like pictures, drinks, food, scents are always good. One thing about scents is and lights is be careful. Scents can trigger migraines and really nasty headaches in some kids, the paraprofessionals, the teachers, and then lights are known to cause seizures. So in this picture, this is actually the office when I worked in emergency shelter care. I was very intentional on how I did things. Low lighting. I have to have access to coffee. I had a swing chair that I actually left there for one of my coworkers because she really liked it and the kids liked it. Calming. I didn't. I tried not to have too much stuff, but I'm a pack rat. And then the kids at the emergency shelter care I worked at loved coming to my office because it was just calming. It was darker. They had access to that chair. Yeah, and I just like pretty lights. Okay, so we're gonna, oh my gosh, move on to a little bit about sensory processing. Sensory processing disorder, from what I understand, and was originally taught, is it was actually something that was with ADHD only, attention hyperactivity deficit disorder. Yeah. It is now becoming its own thing, and it is now also associated with autism. So with processing disorder, it's a difficulty of receiving and organizing that information and then responding to that input in a safe way. Many people who are neurodivergent do have a sensory processing disorder. There's also sensory processing disorder in kids who are not considered neurodivergent. They just struggle with that sensory input. This is another graphic I found off of Google. This one's actually really easy to find. It was one of the first ones I found, and it talks about like for the girls, like she cries when there's bright lights in her eyes. It talks about having selective hearing, and it's not because she has selective hearing. It's because she can hear the buzzing of the lights. She can hear like almost every conversation around her when the teacher or paraprofessional or adults trying to get her attention. It's just there too. Like she can't distinguish between what she needs to hear and what she doesn't need to be listening to. Picky eaters. This is, oh gosh, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Yeah, avoidant food restrictive. Oh my gosh, I just messed that up. ARFID. It's there's similarities where people avoid foods, they won't eat certain foods. These are the jokes about kids who only eat 5 foods, like wheat thins, chicken tenders, mashed potatoes, um, and they get called picky. There's this really cool graphic somewhere in the Facebook world, where it shows a line of wheat thins, and then under it, it's a line of blueberries, and it talks about how the wheat thins are consistent. They're crunchy, they're salty, they taste the same no matter what. But with blueberries, sometimes they're big, sometimes they're sweet, sometimes they're sour. And it talks about that's why kids are more likely to eat this over the blueberries, even though blueberries are healthier. Um,
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that before. I'll see if I can find it again. I know exactly what you're talking about.
okay, we're gonna skip that. Okay, so there's a bunch of like unique sensory processing disorder, and because I can't get this to display right, this slide really talks about modulation disorder, motor disorders. That's like the running, jumping, not having great handwriting, or um, putting too much pressure, and then discrimination disorders. Um, Sensory processing, the Star Institute, that is where I get a lot of my information. They are based in England. They are amazing. They are awesome. I love what they put out there. They also have studies on their websites where they talk about sensory integration and how it has a positive effect on emotional behavioral health for kids. Okay. So when I was doing this, I did a disclaimer because sensory integration should be voluntary. It shouldn't be something that is forced. Adults and youth both participate to create an enjoyable experience that is safe, and it also creates connection. So, like in this picture, the child is in alternative seating on one of those like bouncy ball chair things, and the teacher is there supporting her. But the child is also, we don't know if she's spelling her name or writing on the chalkboard, but her sensory needs are being met, and she's also able to do what would be a learning goal. Um, so there is some people out there who use sensory integration to support the use of restraints and seclusion to stop certain stems. No, it is unethical. It is not what it is meant to. It is not what it is meant for. So when kids run up slides, their joints get information through their senses that helps calm them down. And people take that as when you put a kid in a restraint, you're putting pressure on their joints to force them to calm down. And it's not the same thing because kids can get hurt in restraints. If you're putting any pressure on a kid's joint and they move suddenly, like that joint can pop out of place. They can break something, and kids have died in restraints. Kids have died in seclusion as well. And that is my disclaimer. It should not be used as a punishment. It should not be used to support seclusion and restraint and other harmful practices. Um, so yeah, proponents will say that helps a child relax. It is true. Compression does help. That's like why massages are so comforting to some people. Um, but they can also get that compression through running, jumping, weighted items. Before I left, my emergency shelter care bought actually all of that stuff because I told them to. No, they bought all of that stuff. But like the weighted animals, like kids could put in their lap. Some kids loved it, some kids hated it, and it was never forced. The massage.
I like how you said that. I'm sorry to just interrupt you. They bought all that stuff because I told them to. I'm sure that there are a lot of people that would like you to tell people to. It's good that you were successful. Well, while I've jumped in here real quick, I just want to share a couple of other comments that people have had, if you don't mind. Melissa said, I was a kid who couldn't stand wrinkles in my socks, and my clothes all had to be a certain level of softness or I would get really irritated. Understanding that about myself has also helped me understand the sensory stuff that both my kids deal with. So, and I'm sure we find this a lot more often than we realize. I've been struck recently by the number of parents and adults that I know that have received diagnoses of autism or PDA or other things as adults, that really first became aware through kind of their children. So certainly, I think that connection there is really strong. Let's see. Shelley said exactly this is why we have so many problems in our schools. Continuously having developmentally inappropriate expectations does not work for our kids. we were talking about that a few minutes ago, and this idea that so often there are so many expectations that are just not developmentally appropriate. Let's see what else we have. Another one from Shelley here. Children are designed to play, explore, get dirty, and be creative. They are not designed to work 30 to 40 hours work weeks in a classroom. And Amy said, I finally unpacked my weighted blanket after my move and slept a full night for the first time in months. We did a really fun interview with a woman who started a company making weighted products. Capable is actually the company, but started because of their daughter. And then I have a question for you. Melissa said, do you have any suggestion for kids in school who notice and see everything, how to cope and how to get others in the classroom to understand the school staff isn't going to take down all their decorations, rainbows, toys, etc. They don't understand how overwhelming and distracting a regular classroom is. And then my kid ends up in the hallway. So Heather, any thoughts on that?
Okay, because I worked residential and emergency shelter care. We didn't have a lot of decorations in the classroom. Probably because of that reason, because of how distracting it can be. Thinking, I know when I worked with kids and like they notice things and like it might have been distracting for others. It was, why don't you write down what you see on a piece of paper? Why don't you make a list of things you want to tell your teacher? That's a hard question because I've always been talking about how to integrate more things into sensory.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this goes along with the mission of, how do we become really more neurodiversity affirming? How do we, really, how can we be thoughtful of this? How can we be thoughtful of individual differences? How can we be thoughtful of, sensory differences? And I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen in terms of educating people on all of this. And probably certainly some work that's probably been done out there in some of these areas. Ginger just actually had a recommendation. This is fantastic. I recommend a sensory audit by the students so that teachers can see from a student's perspective what is overwhelming or understimulating. There's also one in my workbook and several online. Maybe Courtney, if you can share a link to Ginger's workbook, that would be great. In fact, I actually happen to have a copy of it sitting right here, right now, Ginger. I was waiting for this moment. Here we go. Regulation and co-regulation, accessible neuroscience, connection strategies for the classroom and beyond. That's a great recommendation. I think doing a sensory audit. I remember having a conversation at one point with Greg Santucci, and we were talking about we were talking about how people focus on behavior and don't realize kind of like the underlying sensory stressors and what's going on. And, people are so quick to look at the child and place all the blame, for a child who's having a hard time on the child's behavior, and they don't take note. And this is something we need to change. We need people to understand the importance of the environment. I remember talking to Greg and saying, look, like instead of doing a functional, behavioral assessment, like we need to do an assessment of the environment, an environmental assessment. My son happened to be, like Melissa mentioned, he was the one that would hear the air conditioning humming 3 classrooms away. These things that are invisible to some, I think we really need to do a lot to raise awareness around these. So getting people to reframe and look at things differently. And again, I think great suggestion there from Ginger. A couple of other comments here real quick. Let's see. Okay, Ginger said turn to chapter 1 and it's there. I feel like I'm getting directives from Ginger, so I've got to here grab this and turn to chapter 1. Let's see, chapter 1. Here we go. I've got my book open here, which you can't see, but lots of fantastic information here. And again, thinking about the environment is really critical to all of that. And here we go. It's like ask and you shall find here. Environmental and sensory audit. So again, and it looks like you've got your copy as well. All right, there we go. So that's a great response there. And Melissa said, great idea. We put a link in the chat also to the workbook. And if the student's non-speaking, the parent or teacher or para and do a walkthrough and notice the student and their physical and or emotional response to each environmental box in the checklist. Okay, great. So ways to work with that, and of course, getting parental input. Sorry, Heather, I didn't mean to. You've got so much conversation going on here, which is great. Let me be quiet and let you get back to it. But thank you, Ginger, and thank you for the questions as well.
Stacy did ask about training so that teachers understand. So we're a commercial for Ginger right now. This is a great book. This is actually one of the first things I consulted when I wanted to introduce this more into where I was working. Dr. Desautel, we work with her in the Alliance. She has resources too. I actually do talk a little bit about her work. Oh my gosh. She's really good about understanding the stuff. She adds in the trauma factor, how the nervous system works, and what teachers can do to co-regulate with their students. She's one of the people who changed my life, along with Dr. Ross Green. He has some really good resources out there too. And then if I'm usually mentioning those two, I am mentioning Mona Delahook. Dr. Delahook works with parents more. Oh my gosh, she works with parents and children more than she does in the school systems, whereas Dr. Desautel works in the school systems. They both use polyvagal as their basis of their work, and it's really good stuff.
Yeah, and back to not to be a commercial here for Ginger, but I know Ginger does a lot of training and consulting as well. And recently, since Ginger's book came out, I know I've Ginger and I are connected and friends on Facebook. I see Ginger always going places. So, there are a number of people doing this kind of work and that are available to come out to schools. And of course, if you're not in that position, there's some great books and other resources out there as well.
Also, weighted stuffed animals, the ones in these pictures, I have a cat from their brand. They're really soft. My weighted cat goes with me to work some days. Her name is Penelope. Just because sometimes I need to be able to sit still, I put that cat on my lap, and it gives me something to do.
I've got a couple more things to share real quick, and then I promise I'll be quiet because I know we're getting down to the last 20 minutes or so, and I want to give you time to finish things up. But we've had a lot of feedback here. Ginger mentioned Jess Sinarski's work works deep into sensory help for kids, and I love everything you were saying, Heather. Let's see. Melissa said Ginger. It really is. I didn't understand that back when my son was older in school. Now I'm that mom. There was another comment here real quick I want to get to. Stacy said, I often hear that autistics do not understand the other person's perspective. However, I find that non-autistics are the ones that have a struggle when they refuse to acknowledge the sensory needs of their student. Important point there, Stacy, for sure. And one final one. And Melissa said, as another small thing, it really helped both of my children when their teachers do not mandate they write with a certain type of writing instrument. Both of my boys have said that writing with pencil makes them feel chills and the vibration the pencil makes on the page bothers them. So they prefer to write with a pen, and we found erasable pens, which they love to use. I appreciate the teachers that allow them to deviate from the school mandated writing utensils. We need schools and teachers to be flexible, right? Like that's one of the things that's really important. It kind of goes back to Stacy's point as well. So Heather, let me be quiet. I'm not going to come back for any more questions until we get to the end, because we've got about another 15 or 20 minutes to go, and I want to give you time to move through things here.
So these two pictures, the first picture, the one on the left, the one with the bare walls, is actually not a sensory room. It's a isolation seclusion room. And on the wall, you can see be kind, it's social skill stuff. I find most of those, especially in a seclusion room, to be condescending towards the child, and they're not going to pay attention to anything on that wall. They're too hyped up. They're too emotional. the unregulated. There's the word. The other room is actually from a um, occupational therapist, and that was a calming room they created, where the kids like can climb on the mats. They can um, fall onto the mats if they want to. The string lights are something kids put on their laps, and they can manipulate them. Um, and so it's just like, which would you choose? And this idea came from, I really should start writing down these TikToks. This gentleman, worked in his school, and he wrote a paper about it. While he was working in his school, um, they went away from seclusion, and they took the seclusion rooms that were in the classrooms and turned them into sensory rooms. And he talks about how it took a long time for kids to be able to go into those sensory rooms because of their negative experiences in the seclusion rooms. But like once they started using the sensory rooms, he noticed a change in their behaviors. So sensory integration is important. He is a doctor. Bruce Perry, he wrote a lot of things, but in this particular book, he talks a lot about dancing. It's in one of the middle. Oh my gosh, it's in the middle of the book. He talks about like how he suggested foster parents put their like 13-year-old foster children into kinder dance classes, not to be condescending, but in those early dance classes, kids are learning literally how to make a beat and how to feel a beat, and that helps children feel the beat in their heart. It helps them recognize what their heart feels like when they're upset, and it also starts teaching them calming strategies or how to calm that heartbeat down. He also talks about a foster mother he worked with, and he's talking to her about why she's so successful, and she talks about like how some kids just need to be held and rocked, and they need to be able to hear another heartbeat, that and how their heartbeats start matching with each other, and how that helps brings calming to that child. And if you've not read this book, you should read it. It is really good. It is probably that's not one of my favorite books, but it is one of my favorite books. It is one I recommend constantly for people to read, especially if they want to know what it looks like to work as a therapist with kids who have gone through significant trauma. So it's important. Okay, so this is a story about when I was working in emergency shelter care as admin. I was expected to be on call, and we had this little boy who was like 10. He was destroying things. He was being violent. And so they had restrained him, and because he was restrained, they had to call me, and they're like, he's hiding underneath the table. We're about to restrain him again. And I'm like, no, you're not. Let him be underneath that table. If you have your eyes on him and you can hear him, that is good enough. There is no need to force him out into the open and restrain him because he's under a table. That's not appropriate. Within 5-10 minutes, I got a call back. They're like, yeah, he's back in the program. He took a shower and he's getting ready for bed. And by helping staff understand that what he's doing is trying to get away from everything and feel safe. Being in tight and enclosed spaces for those who are not claustrophobic is calming for some reason. I'm not one of those people. I'm claustrophobic. But his senses were more controlled. He didn't have to see the lights. He could hear the staff member who was in there, and I told that staff member to be selective when talking to him because that might escalate him, and just let him relax. And that actually did go into the school a little bit because the school was on campus, and they would let him sit under the desk if he needed to, and that just helped keep him calm, and it prevented further restraints with this child. And before I left, I had written the plan to eliminate restraints in that program, but and part of that was including sensory integration. In the state of Indiana, for residentials and emergency shelter care, seclusion is not allowed at all. It was abused, obviously. Kids were put in there for hours and hours on end, no access to bathrooms, no access to anything. And it was not a good situation.
Of course, it's still allowed in schools in the state.
Yes, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it's still
Yep.
allowed in schools because I've seen
Yep.
some manuals.
Yep.
So the goals for sensory integration was to decrease violence, property destruction, and self-harm behaviors. Is to give them access to new coping skills, to teach and support emotional regulations, ones they could use to co-regulate with the adult, ones they could do by themselves. Um, Give them skills to safely respond to the environment, and then safe de-escalation techniques for the staff. So when I was doing that, we did come up with rules. It was not to be used as a reward or a punishment. Um, Sensory integration is not only for children with IEPs, 504s, or any type of accommodation. Sensory integration benefits everybody. Um, Unless that child is harming themselves or others, there's really no right or wrong way to use sensory integration. It can be worked into everyday activities. It does not have to be done at a special time. And then sensory integration should have tools and activities for all of the senses, not just a few. This is NeuroWild. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And she talks about like perceptive input, the deep pressure cuddles, weighted blankets, and then how it helps with a I'm going back at oh my gosh. Then she talks about visual stims, like looking at favorite things, dark spaces, lights off. Sometimes just having a picture of a family member is calming. Rocking, swaying, and then movement, climbing, running, pacing. Again, if you don't follow Nora Wild on Facebook or any of her social medias, do it. You won't regret it. This is what sensory integration looks like. In the ideal world, if schools had money, this would be amazing. Sensory paths, alternative seating, quiet corners, sensory walls. In one of these pictures, there is a child jumping onto a jump pad. I really tried to get my emergency shelter care to get that, but they're like $500. And then the real world argument, again, Nora Wild, because I was having problems telling staff about this. In today's society, I have my phone. I have my favorite songs on here. I have pictures that make me happy on here. I can order something from Walmart, like a candle that brings me comfort, and have it to my house within the day or the next day. So we're not preparing them for the world, but we are teaching them social skills, problem solving skills. We're teaching them ways to regulate their emotions. I have a worry stone in one of my work bags that I carry with me, because it's something I can put in my pocket. When I work with adults now, even when I talk about mindfulness, I have crystals, because crystals have meaning for like anxiety. Like amethyst, I think it has anti-anxiety properties for those who work with crystals. And if my clients don't believe in the stuff with crystals, I tell them though that like why that it means anti-anxiety, and like it's a visual, and when they're holding it, you describe it. It's cold, it's pointy, or I have a round crystal. I don't remember what it is. It's clear. It looks like a little crystal ball, and like I tell people to tell me what it feels like. Roll it in your hands. It's little things like that. And so when we're preparing kids for the real world, we're thinking about what we think the real world should be for them, and not what their real world is.
Yeah, and of course, in the real world, the ability to tune in and hear and listen to the internal feelings and sensations in your body is a critical life skill. Yeah, I mean, I always hated that in the real world. In the real world, well, what if they have to go to the store? It's like, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. Just
No, it's
it's one of
okay.
those things that blows my mind. It's like when you hear that argument, and you're absolutely right. I mean, what we need to do is really, normalize so much of this, and listening to our bodies is so important.
And I hear from kids all the time, oh, I'm not allowed to wear my noise canceling headphones at school because it's distracting to other kids, or I might not hear the teacher. And I think it's hard for some adults and teachers to let go of that power where everything has to be the same, because when I was taking my special ed classes, it was drilled into us. Fairness isn't the same for everybody, and what's fair to one kid may not be fair to another, but you have to be able to meet the needs of both kids. So everyday sensory integration. running, bumping, hitting. When I worked in preschool, one of the teachers let her kids climb the slides, which was a rule which wasn't allowed according to the preschool, but she didn't care because of the sensory integration, the interception that kids were feeling. Lowering the lights when you can, allowing kids to paint, draw, color, weighted blankets, help put an even pressure on joints, having access to comfort materials. I say soft because I like soft things, like my sensory cat. Doing rhythmic exercises such as dancing have been shown to improve symptoms of trauma as well. Dr. Bruce Perry talks a lot about that. Brain breaks is another name, and focused attention practices. Yes, Dr. Desautel. She just released within the last couple of weeks on her website, Revelations of Education for Education, 120 focused attention practices that you can print off and keep with you. I printed off a copy. This is my office. I'm really excited to use them. And some of them are like known, like star breathing. She talks about chewing gum. She talks about straw breathing, where you breathe through a straw. She has one where you put like a cotton ball on your wrist and then you blow it to your fingertips. I'm a big Dr. Lori Desautel's fan, if you can't tell.
She's got a new book coming very soon. I may or may not have seen a early version of it, but there's a new book coming soon that's got some great stuff as well. Brain Body Brilliance, I think it is.
Something like that. And she needs to stop putting teasers out on her website because I'm anxiously awaiting for that.
It's coming soon. It's coming soon. Yeah. In fact,
So
we've even scheduled a live event for when the book comes out to talk about it. So, it's going to be here soon, Heather. You won't have to wait much longer.
Yay! These are some of my works cited. So like the STAR project in England is really good. The OT Toolbox has really good things on their website. I think actually a couple of my infographics are from them. If you Google the OT Toolbox, you should be able to find them. Brain balance centers are, it actually had the video link, but we're running out of time. They show some of their work. They're the ones who are bringing in some more emotional and behavioral things into their practice while working with their kids, like talking about emotions. They also, this is the place I'm thinking about, the kids also can bring their homework and staff will help them with their homework, and the kids could be like climbing on the wall and the staff will be helping them with their homework. They're doing some really nice things. Yeah, that's, when I brought this up at work, this is the stuff I brought up to them, and I gave them price points because some sensory things are very expensive, but if you look for something similar, you can usually find it cheaper. Like this body sock the kids loved. Some of the staff liked getting into it and you're supposed to push against it. There's cheaper versions of that around. Balance beams. This hammock chair, they're cheaper. And then these lights, depending on the school, or if you do work residential, they may not allow like this tent thing because there's the eyesight earshot rules where you have to be able to see the kids. But the idea was to give kids an alternative to their rooms where they could still be seen but still feel like they were in a more enclosed space. And then there's that jump mat they wouldn't let me get.
Oh, fantastic. Well, so thank you for the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and remove your deck here. And we've just got a minute or two to kind of take a couple of questions and then wrap things up. But I did want to get to, I have one here from Stacy. I was called in once to support the teacher who had duct taped his student to the chair simply because they would not sit still. After speaking to this teacher for more than 20 minutes and trying to explain to him that you cannot tape children to a chair, he still did not get it. Therefore, I collected all of the duct tape in his classroom and brought it to the principal and recommended that they release him from this position immediately. What the hell? How much common? And it looks like we lost the rest of the message. But unfortunately, Stacey, this is not the first time I've heard stories about kids being duct taped to chairs. In Hawaii, a number of years ago, kids being taped to trees. We've seen a lot of things in terms of these things. Of course, you're using duct tape, you're using a mechanical restraint, which is probably not even legal if you're here in the U.S. in most states. But there's a lot of things that people do. One of the other common things we see is the misusage of equipment that actually has a real purpose, like a Rifton chair, which is designed for positional support. And we see kids are strapped to those chairs to prevent them from moving, and that's not appropriate either. So a lot of those things happen. Let's see a couple other comments here. Amy said, "You got to see my crystal hoard. Half my box from Connecticut are just crystals." And as I understand it, Amy also like brought every rock from her yard to California when she moved. So I think Amy definitely has a collection there. Amy also mentioned noise canceling headphones are accommodations that should be normalized in schools. Absolutely. And Ginger said, yes, one of my favorite sayings, fair isn't everyone getting the same thing. It's everyone getting what they need. Absolutely. So we are kind of reaching the end of our time here, and have two more things here, I guess. Stacy said, as an educator and a parent, I'm not a fan of paper pencil homework. I value family time. And Sarah Ann said, have you come across any research done where anyone has found statistics on how sensory integration has reduced the use of restraint and seclusion?
Not okay. There is research on sensory integration in mental health. There is research on sensory integration and the use of it in schools. There is not a lot on sensory integration and with seclusion, decreasing seclusion and restraint. That's to come. Maybe that will be the focus of my doctoral paper. But
we would be happy to publish that.
There is research though that does show a positive correlation with sensory integration in the decrease of behaviors that would lead to seclusion and restraint.
That's right.
And
That's right.
In residential, like self-harm was always a cause for restraint. So if we replace the self-harm with sensory integration, there is a paper on that. Actually, that's, like I said, how I got started in this whole thing. It had been shown to have a positive correlation in creating a better environment for the kids and decreasing seclusion and restraint and decreasing self-harm.
Right. Yeah, and as Stacy said, and I agree with what I have read so far, I don't actually think we need to do the research. It's obvious that providing and supporting the sensory needs of a student reduce those behaviors that people feel they need to restrain, but that's just me. And I agree with you, but we're often asked these questions like, well, where's the research that says this? When I bring up things like, restraint and seclusion being traumatic, well, where's the research that shows they're traumatic? Do you have a question that holding someone down to the ground against their will is traumatic? If you do, I just don't know how you handle some of these things. But yeah, absolutely. I think you'll find the upstream research that might talk about, the frequency of certain behaviors or self-harm or whatever it may be related to this, but there might be opportunities to do more. So we have kind of reached the end of our time here, and I want to give you an opportunity, Heather, if you have any final words or any final wisdom you want to leave us with. I've really appreciated your presentation, and of course, really value the work that you're doing and that you have been doing. And you've been a part of the alliance here for some time, and really value you and what you do. Any final comments or anything you want to leave us with?
So the thing about the research, I've been talking to both Guy and Courtney, who is here invisibly, about doing some things on evidence-based practices and evidence-supported practices, and why we kind of use those as a gold standard, and the good things about that, and then the negative things, like we know that we shouldn't be doing this, and we shouldn't have to have a grand study showing that, but like without that study, it comes down to insurance and funding usually. So
well, that's an active conversation we've had, and Stacy must have been reading our minds here, because she says the research also says ABA is effective. So I get your point, but the issue is that evidence based I come from a science background and I love the idea of evidence and I love the idea of data, but an evidence base is only evidence for the questions that you've asked and the things that you're trying to show, and can be misleading, right? I mean, having evidence for something doesn't mean that it's ethical or that it's, something that you should be doing, but lots of conversations. I will mention too, as we're kind of wrapping up that, and this is the first time I've actually kind of said this out loud, but at the Alliance, we're actually planning a early event, or early in 2025, we're planning a virtual event, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get Heathyr to present for that virtual event, but we're planning a little virtual conference, so there might be more opportunities to hear from. We've got such an amazing team right now. Heathyr, I don't know if you've been watching since you joined, but we've got social workers and occupational therapists and speech language pathologists and teachers and so many amazing people with a lot to offer. So anyway, any other final thoughts here, Heathyr, as we wrap up? And you're getting some really nice comments in here. Courtney not only is invisible behind the scenes, but is enjoying your presentation. You got a nice thank you here from Heathyr, and Amy as well says you're amazing. Thank you so much for all this fantastic information. We're lucky to have you. Any final words?
No, we've been here a while.
We have time goes by quickly. Well, with that, we will then go ahead and wrap up. And I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. It's always an honor and a privilege to have people that join us from all around the world and come to be part of this community. And this is really all about, doing better and doing better for kids, doing better for everyone, because I happen to be a firm believer that the things that we do that are going to improve the outcomes for our kids in schools, improve outcomes for teachers and staff in residential facilities, same rule. If we make things better for the people that we're serving, we're going to make things better all the way around. So there's a lot that we can do. So I appreciate that. Heathyr, you can stick around for a second. We're going to say goodbye to everybody else. And we will see you again, I think, in 2 weeks, although who knows, we've had a lot of special events lately. So we may see you again sooner. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.